College affordability has come into question as tuition at public colleges and universities continues climbing.
In the first part of our series on college affordability, News 18's Alex Maragos looks at how Purdue stacks up against its public peers.
For generations, we've heard that having a well-educated workforce is key to America's success on the global stage. Now, the education that we hope sets us apart is becoming more expensive. Today, student tuition makes up about half of what schools bring in nationwide, compared to just 23% in 1987. That number has risen as state governments cut back their public school funding. Michael Dannenberg of the Education Trust has testified before Congress about college affordability. He says the push by state governments to cut college funding ultimately will hurt students.
The research says that the number one driver of public college tuition and fee increases is declining state funding for higher education as a percentage of revenue.
Ted Malone is Purdue's executive director of financial aid. While Purdue's budget has gone up over the years, state allocations have not kept up, meaning students are left picking up the tab.
Somewhere about 5 years or so ago, we sort of had the crossing of that line on the graph where the state allocations are now paying a lesser percent of our cost, and tuition and other revenues are paying more.
Here are those state allocations to Purdue, adjusted for inflation since 1975. State funding to Purdue typically rises and falls with the economy. So does median household income in Indiana, shown here, adjusted for inflation since 1984. What you'll notice is that neither of these lines look like this one. This is inflation-adjusted in-state tuition at Purdue since 1975. In 1981, a Purdue education cost less than $3,000 in today's money. Today, Purdue tuition is about $10,000. Purdue is not immune to the national trend. State allocations are falling and rising tuition is filling the gaps. But among four-year public colleges, Purdue is doing better than many of its peers.
Well, some people missed it, but Indiana was in the very top tier in protecting higher ed funding.
It's what you'd expect to hear from Purdue President Mitch Daniels, but his claim is backed up by some solid data. Since the 2008 recession, Indiana has done well to help students shoulder the burden of college cost. This chart from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities shows that of 47 states that reduced spending per student in the last 5 years, Indiana was hardly the worst offender.
We and the other Indiana institutions are dramatically better off than our sister schools in many other states.
In those last 5 years, Indiana has cut far less than Illinois, Kentucky, and Ohio. But even with a tuition freeze going for the third straight year, President Daniels admits that too many students graduate Purdue with too much debt. Tomorrow, Purdue students with college debt tell us their stories. Plus, we'll tell you about one Indiana tuition program that's being called a model for the nation. Reporting in West Lafayette, Alex Maragos, News 18.